So jobs to be done is a way to go beyond your product, beyond the service that you have today, and really expand out and think about what are your customers trying to get done. Not just what are they buying today, but what are they trying to get done in their lives, and how can you play a role in changing that? So I often get asked, so how is that different from needs? And of course, need is a very broad term. So, I might need to be an amazing father, but I might also need a drink of water, right? I don't worry about me. But it's that fuzziness in need creates complication. When you think about an automaker, they typically have about 300 statements of needs that a new car has to fulfill. The turning radius and the headroom and the capacity of the trunk. But they tend to also think very narrowly about what business they're in. They're making cars. And oftentimes those cars are defined by the size of the vehicle. So they're in the market for mid-size sedans, for instance. Now, if you look very narrowly there, what you end up doing is creating a car which may be very high quality, but isn't terribly distinct from everything else that's out there. Toyota Camry, very well-made car, not a super distinct car, however. BMW, when it launched the Mini, went into a market that a lot of people thought BMW was crazy to enter. Small cars, who makes money on small cars? Think of the Yaris and the Fit. These are popular but not very profitable vehicles. And yet the Mini is a really differentiated vehicle because it allows for an almost infinite degree of customization. The job it's trying to get done for people isn't just transportation, but it's self-expression. And because it has nailed that market positioning on self-expression, it's able to charge a huge premium over other small cars. Its competition isn't just the Yaris and the Fit or the Prius. It's also fashion and scooters and taking interesting trips to make yourselves more interesting people. Jobs to be done can also give you a compass heading for strategic transformation. So think about what General Motors has done in its investment with Lyft. It's going beyond just selling cars. It is becoming a truly transportation company. So by stepping back and looking not just at what are people buying today, what do you happen to be selling, you're not just in the ice cream business. You're in the business of creating a social experience, of celebration, of indulgence. And then looking broadly, you can discern there are a lot of ways that you can take this that really expand your competitive set and make sure that you can charge what you might historically think of as a premium, because you're not just selling a product. You're selling an emotional fulfillment that may be also very difficult for people to attain through other mechanisms. So what do you do with that? That's sort of a general, go out and innovate. How do you actually make this happen? So we have a tool in the book that Bobby showed you, Jobs to be Done, called the Jobs Atlas. And it's a way to create a holistic 360-degree view about what opportunities really should be. And it centers first on that job to be done. For a target customer, what are they trying to get done? And then why do people prioritize different jobs at different times? We might all think that safety is important in a vehicle, but if you just had a newborn baby, perhaps safety is more important to you than to somebody else. What are people doing today to satisfy those jobs to be done? What journey do they go through? Importantly, you do not want to start there. A lot of companies, when they talk about innovating, they do the customer journey map and they look for the pain points in the journey. And that is a useful thing to do, but if you don't first say, why does this journey occur? What are people truly trying to do? If you're on the seize the moment with indulgence versus the celebration versus feel better, your journey through that ice cream purchase and usage occasion is going to be very, very different. So first, orient yourself on that job to be done. Look at the current approaches and the pain points that customers have. Then what success metrics do they have for a new solution? Of going over to the middle part of our framework there. What are the criteria for what a solution must do in order to be successful? So as Bobby alluded to, I led the team that developed one of the first smartphones. And we had several jobs that were in mind. But stay connected to the office does not translate into the 50 things that I needed on the specification sheet to develop the smartphone. So you have to go from high-level insight down to more granular level, what I'm actually going to do tomorrow. And success criteria are a way to translate that into something that's really tractable. And then finally, what gets in the way of those new solutions being adopted? There are a lot of great ideas out there that never see the light of day. So we consult often for people with new ventures. And they come and you sort of see the spirals in their eyes. They're seized with the power of their idea. They're really excited. And I'll ask them, so is your idea better than indoor plumbing? Look at me like, it's a little odd question, isn't it? So indoor plumbing took 4,500 years from its invention in the Indus Valley to its broad adoption in Victorian England. And it wasn't because of the quality of the idea. The idea is awesome. But rather, things got in the way. You had to have a lot of people agree, whether they were the people with the water supply or the sewage or the people building the houses, the people owning the houses. They all had to sort of come together. The risk factors of a solution gone wrong were very prohibitive as well. Lots of things got in the way. So think through what might get in the way of accomplishing a job with a novel solution. And then, if possible, calculate on the last part of the framework here, what's that worth to people? And what's your competition? Not just your day-to-day competition that you always think about, although obviously you want to think about that too, but what's the real competition? So we learned that bars compete with ice cream. So don't know what we do with that, but it's indicative that there is at least some occasion out there for ice cream to sell not just indulgence, but bonding and celebration. If that's the real competition, then what are your unique strengths as an ice cream company to beat that competition on those target jobs to be done? So using this approach allows you to get that full perspective of customers and innovate in totally new ways. So let's look here at the jobs. So a while ago, I did some work for a major credit card company. And in particular, we were looking at their loyalty program, which had historically been focused on airline miles. Airline miles are a currency everybody recognizes, but because they're so recognized, they're also somewhat commoditized. And they're also quite expensive to purchase for the card company. So what else could we do? Well, we had to start somewhere, and we figured let's focus on a target group of customers. So for this company, high spenders were a particular priority. Broadly speaking, there were three types of high spenders. There were people who just liked to live very well. There were folks who were business travelers, and you could tell they're business travelers because they would stay in a hotel like 2 nights a month. Maybe they were having an affair, but we assumed business traveler, assumed good intent. And then finally, we were thinking about small business owners who would often put a lot of their company expenses through on their personal cards. So 3 very different jobs that cards were getting done for these folks. So let's go a level deeper. And we looked in particular at the business travelers and the small business owners. What did they really need? So what they really appreciated, what they really needed in their lives, was a way to maximize the limited amount of downtime they had at home. Airline miles were not a way to do that. People like me, business travelers, I've got 300,000 miles on several different airlines. I don't need more miles. What I need is something to really make the most of the few days that I have at home. Small business owners, same thing. They may not have traveled as much, but they were busy all the time, and they really wanted to make the most of the time that they did have available. So the company came out with a series of events that its cardholders could gain access to, not just the concert, but maybe the dinner before the concert at a hot restaurant, which were real experiences that were not commodities. They'd be remembered for years and years afterwards. And you know what? It was cheaper than airline miles as well. So by really understanding that job to be done, they were able to decommoditize and save money. Let's talk about toothbrushes. So it's not quite indoor plumbing, but the toothbrush as we know it has been around for about 500 years. And you know, it hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot. Plastic has replaced wood, and nylon has replaced horsehair, but basically, if you took a toothbrush from 1500, it's pretty similar to what you're probably using right now. Except for this thing, the Colgate Wisp, which is a blockbuster success. Its first year had over $100 million in revenues. And you know what? It is one lousy toothbrush. How can that be? So the Wisp, for those of you who don't know it, is wispy. It's very thin, sort of flimsy. The bristles are incredibly short. They're not very flexible. It has this little colorful bead in the center that does absolutely nothing. Just tastes a little fresh. It's pretty, I guess. So what's up with that? So the Wisp is actually a wonderful example of a company thinking about jobs to be done in a very sophisticated way. It's not targeting the job of impressing your dentist. But rather, it's targeting those of you in the audience who might be a little afraid after lunch, spinach salad, wonder what's still there in my teeth. So it targets not the anti-gingivitis and all the things that you should be doing at home, but rather the obvious bits of food that might be stuck in your mouth to make you presentable throughout the rest of the day and confident in yourself. And that bead is about the confidence. It has a little bit of fresh flavor that makes you think you have freshened your mouth for the rest of the day. You haven't. But that's okay, right? It's about that, and finally, it's about a break in routine during the day. It's a bit of a reboot to the day. You're freshening yourself up. You are ready to go out and tackle that afternoon. So the jobs are actually very narrowly defined. Clean the obvious bits. Give yourself confidence. Reboot your day. That's it. And to do that, it does it very, very well. And it does so in a way that circumnavigates some of the obstacles. So when Colgate targeted this opportunity, they recognized that there was this massive non-consumption of oral care during the day when people are at events like this or in the office. And one of the big reasons for that is that there is this taboo against spitting in public bathrooms. So you don't have to spit this out. Because remember, that bead does absolutely nothing. It doesn't foam, it doesn't do anything like that. You just brush, you throw it away. The other taboo that people have is about throwing away things that are perfectly good. So look, if you bought a cheap toothbrush in bulk at Walgreens, what's it going to cost you? A quarter? You can afford it. But people won't throw it away, right? Oh, it's a perfectly good toothbrush. Should just wrap that up in a piece of a paper towel and save it in my desk for the next day. And it smells a little bit the next day, but it's perfectly good. Or you put it in your purse and it gets the contents of your purse a little slimy, but you save that toothbrush. So because people don't want to throw that away, people won't undertake the whole experience because they dealt with the consequences afterwards. The Wisp is wispy intentionally. It is so flimsy that after a single use, you can't really use it again, and so people throw it away. Oftentimes, jobs to be done follows a similar principle. You're not trying to solve every job for every person in the best way possible. What you're doing is narrowly targeting a customer type or an occasion, and you're looking at why doesn't consumption occur? What are your unique advantages? What does that customer need, and nothing more, to accomplish those jobs to be done? And then finally, what are those obstacles to circumnavigate? You should also think about what's it worth to people. So there's a startup here in New York called Decoraid. Any Decoraid users here? No? Decoraid is trying to disrupt the interior design business. So historically, interior design is focused on high-spending households, people who are spending a lot on refurbishing a whole house or moving in and creating something from scratch. And a lot of their time is really spent closing the sale, not doing the work. So one of the insights for Decoraid is that people really think that they have individualistic tastes in their interior design. But they're wrong. Reality is you are a 13B and you're an 11A and you could be a 9C. So there are ways to typify what your tastes are. And by a few questions and taking a few photos, they can then send the information to a back office where the design occurs and then provide the services. So what's that worth to people? So the real competition for them is not the interior designer, but it's going to Target and getting some pillows or a throw and refreshing a room, or getting a new piece of furniture. What they've been able to do is find inexpensive ways to get critical jobs done. They don't target redesign my whole house. They do target refresh a room. So refreshing a room like that might cost $500 through Decoraid. And oftentimes, it doesn't involve buying a single thing, aside from the service. So the real competition is Target. Do it yourself. By being able to focus tightly on the right job to be done, Decoraid is able to understand what's really worth to people and charge a heck of a lot more than it may cost to actually provide that service. So we put this together for a company in the food business. I'm going to walk through this case study pretty quickly, and then I really want to focus on some of our research results for you. But I just want to show you how it all fits together. So this is a company that you know that has sold prepared foods for a very long period of time. And it saw this influx of trends into its industry around people wanting convenient solutions and ready to eat. But its sales weren't really growing. So they targeted a customer type. For them, it was people who lived in a two-person household where no children were present. And they targeted, furthermore, weekday nights, which might be a little time constrained. The question was, how do they benefit from some of these trends using a lens of jobs to be done? So we looked at some of the jobs. This is obviously a very high-level summary. And there were functional and emotional jobs. For anything, there is an emotional job that's being satisfied. The equipment your surgeon uses in an open heart surgery has an emotional content to it. So there is certainly a functional aspect to much of this as well, but ignoring the emotional component of people dehumanizes how we actually make decisions. And certainly when you talk about something like food, emotion plays a very large role. So functionally, people wanted to be in their budget. They may want to save time. But emotionally, they wanted to do things like unwind for the day. Oftentimes, dinner was a way to demarcate work day from home day. And just throwing something in a microwave, nuking it, and getting it out a minute later was not a real demarcation in the day. It's a way to increase some tension. So having a little bit of time to provide some input into a meal was a way for people to have that demarcation, so long as it wasn't a stressful sort of thing. They didn't have to follow some complicated recipe, but rather do something that was straightforward. It was also a way to demonstrate caring. The food in the microwave for a minute does not say, "I love you." So there are a variety of things that food could do, but wasn't for this company. And then when it thought about what it really needed to do to be successful, things had to seem healthy. Now, it's amazing how some people will define healthy. we did some ethnography, and we observed this one couple that their dinner was a cheeseburger pie. And that was healthy because it was portion controlled. So for a lot of people, the presence of green means healthy. And that's important to know, and that actually came to play a role in the solution. And then the obstacle was often not a lack of time. For families, it would be different, but for two adults living at home on a weekday, it was often not a lack of time, but rather it was lack of energy. So how could they deal with that? One of the big frustrations they had as well was that they felt that they lacked creativity. There are only so many ways or times people want to have chicken in a week. And folks were having chicken 5 times a week. And there was a lot of pain around, okay, we're going to have chicken tonight because that's what I have. How am I going to make this more interesting? How do I actually plan early in the day, what are we going to have for dinner, and make that not boring? And then finally, what it was worth was keyed to accomplishing jobs like that, like spicing up my evening. Because if my dinner is boring every night, my evening is boring, then my marriage is boring. It's bad news, right? So you needed to step back and really understand what that's worth to people, while also recognizing that people have certain benchmarks in their minds about what certain things should cost. And the company ultimately came out with several things, one of which was a line of salad additions. Basically, everybody has salad or lettuce in the household. And it was a way to make salad interesting, because it would have things like chicken and other things that could provide the protein. The salad made it healthy. The creation of the salad was mindless, and yet it was also a way to demarcate the day. So it accorded to those jobs very, very well. Again, a 360-degree view about what people needed, what they really desired, even if they had trouble expressing it themselves, led to those sorts of insights. So let's talk about credit unions. We did a survey of 521 people, 300 of which were credit union members. About 109 had lending accounts, but the 300 had some sort of transactional account, debit checking account. And then other people were bank customers or bank lending. And obviously there's overlap. There are some people who had accounts both at a credit union and a bank. But we forced the quota of 300. About a 25-minute survey, nationwide internet survey. So what did we learn? We surveyed them on a range of jobs to be done and discovered there were some real gaps. We asked them to rate the importance of some jobs to be done and their satisfaction. So, number 1, feel financially secure. Notice the emotive content there. Right, feel secure. That doesn't mean have savings in place for retirement, although that's probably an element of it, but it's the more overarching emotional state of feeling financially secure. Avoid stressing over finances was number 2 in terms of the size of the gap. People wanted to eliminate debts. That would be very nice, of course. Hard to do. Setting aside money for major expenses, reducing worry about financial surprises. All of these were major gaps that were identified. I should mention, by the way, that there is the research summary that you will be receiving later on, and there is the full data set available, which I think is available to you if you wish to slice and dice this by people with a large mortgage or who recently became a credit union member, et cetera. So all those parameters are out there. What to me is striking about this slide is how little of it is addressed by credit unions and banks today. Now, there were other jobs that were very well satisfied. Short-term lending, long-term lending, that was satisfied. But many of these things are not addressed, and yet they could be, by companies that have data, that have financial expertise, that have a relationship with people whereby people will actually listen to the advice. So while some of the things here were not surprising, eliminate all my debts, unsurprisingly, is an important job to be done. That's undersatisfied. Some other things were quite surprising. and illuminating about where you might want to take things in the future. So credit union members, by and large, were a little bit less averse to debt than non-credit union members. They valued access to branches and ATMs where you could both deposit and withdraw a little bit less. Millennials, interestingly, and there are data cuts throughout this for millennials in the detailed data set, millennials valued branches more than non-millennials. That was somewhat surprising, but the difference was pretty substantial, so it was statistically significant. And then trust. So nobody was super high on trust, I got to tell you. But credit unions did a heck of a lot better than banks. And you also did better than financial advisors, investment firms, and insurance companies. And moreover, when we asked where is a good place to learn about savings habits, investment habits, spending habits, where's a good place to learn about insurance options, credit unions ranked far higher than banks on those things. I think because of that trust. So we then asked, okay, so these are what your important jobs are. Here's what motivates you, your attitudes toward these institutions. What are you doing? So you're afraid of financial surprises. Are you tracking your money closely? No, most people were not. Are you creating a monthly budget? No. Is there a long-term financial plan? No. Is there a short-term financial plan? Of those four, that was the least. And yet, if you think about what causes stress, what causes surprise, maybe it's the retirement in 2 or 3 decades, but oftentimes it's some much closer to now sort of events that people have not planned for, but they could. Did they expect a lot from their bank or credit union? No, not really. It was pretty low. However, people were more open to credit unions providing new services than they were to banks. Again, I think because of the trust. Were they looking to fintechs to solve these dilemmas? No. No, they actually had a real leeriness towards fintechs of accomplishing this. So, the big aha here for us was that there are all these things that people are trying to get done in their lives. And they're cobbling together extremely suboptimal ways of approaching these goals. Relative to both banks and fintechs, the credit unions are seen as trustworthy territory for learning about new things, learning about your own habits, making a plan. And yet, oftentimes, those opportunities are not being seized upon today. So we're going to go back in the group exercises after the panel discussion to talk a little bit about these findings and have each of your tables think through what are some opportunities that come out to you about how you can execute on these. But I want you to just mull over this for a while and think about what this might mean in terms of your offerings, your positioning in the marketplace, and your digital transformation. So a couple of takeaways, and then we'll stop for a couple minutes of questions. So when we talk about jobs to be done, we're going deep. You notice when we did the ice cream exercise, I asked why a few times? It could get a little annoying if I had really gone after it. That's good. You want to really dig in. You want to act like the 4-year-old and ask, why? Because oftentimes what you find are motivations that go in different directions that you think, and ways of satisfying jobs to be done that may not be at all what you had historically done, and yet really valid competitors nonetheless. It's only one piece of the puzzle, though. You need to understand what drives people to have different jobs to be done, what attitudes or occasions or circumstances distinguish folks from one another. And what are they doing today? What are the pain points? What are the success metrics and the obstacles that get in the way? So the Jobs Atlas is a way to bring that all together. So what you can do if you want to get started with this is really think through what are the jobs that your target customers are trying to get done. Now, notice in the ice cream example, we talked about you, not people on average. And we talked about a specific occasion, not occasions on average. Had we lost that richness of detail, I think we would have had some very different responses. So it's important to really focus down. Focus not just on the high-spending card members, for instance, but on the small business owners, the business travelers. What's unique about them? What are they trying to get done? And you keep asking why. Really understand what is up with them and why that is and where are the frustrations. It's not just asking people what they want. There's a, I think, apocryphal quote from Henry Ford that says, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Don't just go for the faster horse. Go at what people are trying to accomplish, and that can widen out that set of opportunities as well as the set of competitors that you're trying to go for.